Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to all members of the audience today. I'm Roger, and I'm part of the UOBAM Robo-Invest team. We are delighted to have invited Chuan Hao from our UOBAM Sustainability Office to join us this evening. Before we start, let's run through some of the house rules for today. So the chat box is available if you have any connectivity issues, whereby you can actually raise them to the Zoom host. The polls will appear on screen. The polls will appear on screen for your selection and the results will be shared. Click on the Q&A icon to ask any questions throughout the session. Click on the like button to upvote any questions that are raised in the Q&A section as well. Scan on the QR codes with your phone to access the feedback form and download the page, or click onto the links available in the chat box. Next. So today's topic is actually on how to get started with UOBAM Robo-Invest. For our new clients in attendance today, UOB Robo-Invest is actually Singapore's first robo-advisor in an e-wallet. There are two portfolios, global portfolio and global impact portfolio. The latter is actually invested into ESG ETFs, which are carefully selected by our UOBAM Sustainability Office, which Chuan Hao will be sharing a lot more later on. On the agenda today, this session will provide key insights into the introduction of UOBAM, introduction into UOB Robo-Invest, and Chuan Hao will be providing insights and also the introduction to our UOBAM Sustainability Office, and most importantly, in terms of the ESG exchange traded funds ETFs selection process as well. Lastly, we'll round off to touch on the key features of the app, which includes how to set up a regular savings plan within the app itself to leverage on dollar cost averaging and investing in a disciplined and consistent manner as well. Without further ado, let's get going. So for those who are still new to investment and new to UOBAM itself, right? UOB Asset Management is actually, our purpose is actually to create value for investors, partners, and communities. And we are to help them to achieve their goals and aspirations. Our vision is to be a trusted asset management manager in Asia, leading in innovation and sustainability. All in all, we have 4 strategic pillars: be digital first, embrace technology and harness digital innovations. We focus on sustainability as well, invest for both profit and purpose while shaping for a better world for future generations. We embrace our Asian heritage. We are rooted in ASEAN with a regional outlook and footprint. Lastly, we keep our customers at the center, provide top-of-class investment solutions and performance. At UOBAM, we invest for profit and purpose while shaping a better world for future generations. In terms of our strength, stability, and the scale, UOBAM is actually in 9 markets in Asia. We have over 100 investment professionals, and we are managing an estimated about 37.7 billion in Singapore dollars under AUM as of 31st of January 2022. We have over 35 years of investment experience, and we are 100% wholly owned by UOB. So let's quickly get started in terms of introduction to UOBAM Robo-Invest. So as mentioned earlier, UOBAM Robo-Invest is actually Singapore's first robo-advisor within an e-wallet itself. And we are proud to announce that we are actually running a current promotion right now, which is actually if you top up a minimum of $500 into the Robo-Invest account, you actually receive $20 credits from us. And also, if you're a Singtel mobile client as well, you actually receive 1,000 dash points. Can we have that slide, please? Yep. So from now until 30th of June 2022, simply top up fresh funds of $500 and maintain an account for 90 days. You receive $20 worth of credits into your UOBAM Robo-Invest account. You also receive 1,000 Dash rewards points for our Singtel mobile customers as well. You will notice there's actually a QR code on the right-hand side. If you are still not a Dash user, please download the app, scan onto the QR code and download the app. And then UOBAM Robo-Invest is actually the second tile on the left, starting from the left on the second row within the Dash app. Next. So for those that are very keen in terms of how the markets have been doing, I just wanted to quickly run through in terms of the market commentary and also in terms of how the portfolios have been performing. And lastly, what is our views going forth? So since the start of the year, we've been experiencing headwinds which have caused the markets to be very volatile. Global equities actually fell in the first quarter due to a more aggressive monetary policy adopted by central banks. You would have seen that the Federal Reserve Bank, the Fed, have actually raised interest rates. And we also have seen the Russian-Ukraine conflict as well. In terms of the interest rate sensitive stocks, they have suffered the most, while energy and commodity stocks actually rose. Asian equities sold off in March after renewed concerns of US sanctions on China. So from this chart itself, you will actually notice that as of first quarter 2022, global equities actually fell by 4.8%, and actually the Asian equities fell by 7.6% as well. Next. In terms of bonds, so bonds actually fell due to inflation concerns and investors began to price in more rate hikes. Asian high yield market actually fell off but rebounded in March as the Chinese government signaled more support for the property market. Both global bond and Asian bond actually declined 4.9% for first quarter 2022. So one of the key points that I wanted to highlight from this chart and the earlier chart is that you will notice that global bond and Asian bond actually fell at 4.9%, whereas Asian high yield actually fell at 9.7%. So if you refer to the previous chart, global equity actually fell off at 7.6%, or rather Asian equities fell off at 7.6%. So this is quite a rare phenomenon that we are seeing, whereby the bond markets actually fell more than the equity markets. And to us at UOBAM itself, right, we do not believe this as a new normal. We think that this will actually revert, and this is something that is not going to be a prolonged kind of a situation as well. So let's just quickly go into the portfolios. So we have 5 portfolios, and ranging from very conservative to very aggressive as well. So this is how the portfolios have been structured in terms of the breakdown, and also in terms of the performance for the ESG and the non-ESG. Next. This is the conservative portfolio. This is the moderate portfolios. And I'll touch on a little bit in terms of the aggressive portfolio. So in terms of the aggressive portfolio, you will see that actually the portfolio is down 4.9% over the last 3 months, and 4.0% since the start of the portfolios that was incepted on 18th of December as well. Next. And lastly, in terms of our very aggressive portfolio, right, the breakdown of the portfolio actually comes from US equity, Asia ex-Japan equity, and global equity, and also cash as well. So where do we see going forth? So we think that 2022 started with a view that global economy will continue on an expansion path. However, the geopolitical uncertainty has increased the risk of a growth shock. Growth shock itself may also come from a very aggressive monetary tightening by global central banks to alleviate rising inflation. While global recession is not on our base case, it has become a possibility as well. However, we will actually closely monitor the situation to formulate our investment strategy, and we believe in remaining invested through market jitteriness. So in terms of the individual portfolios performance, right, we actually not to worry, we'll actually be putting this up onto our website, where we actually will put in the link into the chat box itself. Once that is up on the website itself, you can feel free to go to the website. You can actually see the performance of the portfolios and also our breakdown in terms of the performance and where it has been attributed to, and also our outlook as well. Next. So at this juncture, let me bring in Chuan Hao, who will touch on a little bit and introduce the UOBAM Sustainability Office also. Chuan Hao, please.
Yes, thank you, Roger. I'm Chuan Hao from the UOBAM Sustainability Office. So what we do at the UOBAM Sustainability Office is that we focus a lot on looking at integrating sustainable investing into the investment process in UOBAM. And we have a regional office across the regions as well, right? And I do want to thank everyone in the audience for taking your time off after dinner to join us. Now, tonight, I will also be sharing on our UOBAM Robo-Invest ESG ETF selection. And to begin our discussion, perhaps let's touch on more about sustainable investing, right? So I think some of you might be aware that sustainable investing is gaining in popularity. So now and ever, that's actually the title of the most recent IPCC report. So what exactly is the IPCC report? It's basically a report produced by scientists globally on the dangers of the climate disaster. So a case example of this is that recently, right, because of the hot weather and the drought that we are seeing, the wheat production in India, it has fallen. So India has actually responded in restricting exports on wheat, and now we're actually seeing export restriction on sugar as well. So I'm actually glad that we have this webinar at 8 p.m. after dinner time. So it's easier for all of us to be stomaching this news, right? But on a more serious note, there is actually a huge impact from trends like climate change when it comes to sustainable investing. And that's why today we want to be talking more about sustainable investing in our UOBAM Robo-Invest. And globally, as we are seeing from this chart here, we are seeing mega trends of ESG issues, pressing ESG concerns, right? And ESG, in short, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. We are also seeing more regulation to companies and funds, and an increase in client demands for ESG, stemming from increasing awareness of the ESG issues facing our world. One case in point is the one that I've mentioned earlier on the impact on the wheat production. Right? So this has all led to growth in sustainable fund flows. The pressing global concerns regarding our future and growing awareness has also made sustainable investing more important, and it matters a lot more now. Now, the focus on ESG issues and sustainable investing, it has accelerated. So what could be driving this surge in the emphasis on ESG, right? There are a couple of factors, in fact. So firstly, it's actually extreme weather events, something I touched on earlier on, right? It's about the India wheat production. So climate change is extremely important to Singapore and to ourselves in Southeast Asia. And I think for myself, I've definitely felt the weather becoming a lot more extreme, a lot hotter. And thankfully, it rained yesterday. But the weather condition is going to get a lot worse, right? COVID-19, it has also led us to live this new normal of mask wearing, right? But even though restrictions have been relaxed, I believe most of us are quite used to wearing masks. So now I think adding on to this mask wearing becoming our new normal, right? It's also heat waves, droughts, and flooding. So this will all sooner or later become a new normal for us. And the frequency and severity of this heat waves, droughts, and floodings, it's going to be larger and more intense. So there is a need for companies to manage their physical risk from extreme weather events. Furthermore, there's also a heightened awareness of social issues globally, right? The COVID-19 pandemic, it has sort of shown us how fragile the social fabric of the world is, right? Social issues are about stakeholders and people, and the pandemic has put into the spotlight on issues like healthcare access, labor management, forced labor practices, workplace safety, and a lot of other issues relating to communities that businesses operate in. So all of these events that we see here, right, they have increased the awareness of ESG issues. It has also highlighted what it means for a business to be prepared and forward-looking in managing sustainability risks, but not just risks, but also on opportunities as well. So ESG investing, in essence, it involves value adding to the investment decisions and enhancing the earnings visibility and potential of a company by taking into consideration the strong sustainability performance and material ESG issues in the operations of companies. Now, a report by NYU Stern has also shown that ESG investment performs. So companies that have better ESG performance, they do show a linkage to stock price performance as well. Right, and 59% of these portfolios perform better than or similar to their non-ESG counterparts. 65% of these investments, they consider climate risk, they perform better or similar to their non-ESG counterparts. So given all this significance of sustainability and ESG rights, we ourselves at UOB Asset Management, we have also set out a strategic vision of driving sustainability to invest for both profit and purpose. So with that, let me give a bit of background in addition to the introduction I had on our office, right, on our sustainability journey. So we established our Singapore Sustainability Office, where I'm from, to support this vision that I've mentioned. And we also became a signatory to UNPRI, the United Nations Supported Principles for Responsible Investment. We are also a signatory to the Singapore Stewardship Principles for Responsible Investors. And across our network that Roger has mentioned, we also work closely with the regional office to roll out sustainable initiatives. Recently, we are now a member of the Asia Investor Group for Climate Change, AIGCC for short. So through this AIGCC network, right, we are working with like-minded partners on collaborative engagement with companies on climate change issues so that we are able to make a difference in Asia as well. Now, as we start out on this sustainability journey, there is two areas of focus that is actually key to us here relating to sustainable investing. So firstly, it's on man and machine. So we combine man and machine in our internal proprietary ESG research methodology. Secondly, we are also active and localized, right, by leveraging our regional footprint and local expertise to be able to better evaluate the ESG of companies, right, the ESG issues that I've highlighted earlier as well. So now, having heard about all this, relating to sustainable investing, let us perhaps jump straight into our Robo-Invest as well, right? The UOBAM Robo-Invest here, it combines the actively managed funds and ETFs into one single portfolio. So I'll spend some time here actually explaining this ESG process of the ESG ETFs under the Global Impact Portfolio. So this Global Impact Portfolio, it gives investors exposure to funds and ETFs that integrates ESG consideration. So ESG is taken into account into the portfolio. And in the selection of the ETFs, we first look at the geographic allocation, right? The geographic allocation is identified across US, Asia, Japan, as well as global equities. And the corresponding MSCI indexes are also defined for each geography. Now, with this MSCI indexes, right, let me walk everyone through this construction process, right? How ESG is actually incorporated into the index methodology process. The ESG indexes, they are first constructed by selecting the constituents of the parent index. So as you can see here, for the case of US equities, it's the MSCI USA index. So this is the parent index, right? Then from this universe, the MSCI ESG business involvement screen is applied actually. Right, so companies that are involved in controversial weapons, tobacco, civilian firearms, thermal coal, oil sands, right? Such business activities, they are all excluded. So the screening removes this, some of these companies that make money from these controversial businesses. Next, companies with very severe E, S, or G controversies, they are also screened out. So this means that companies that are involved in very severe scandals, right, they are also removed. Then some relevant constraints on sector weights as well as the tracking error are then put into place as part of the optimization constraint. And in addition to this constraint, the portfolio is then optimized to select securities to maximize the exposure to higher ESG scores, right? And this exposure to higher ESG score, the maximization of it is also subject to maintaining the risk and return characteristics similar to the parent index. Now, with all this, right, the final basket of index shall then form the final ESG index. And so for the case of the MSCI USA index, the US geography, ESG index is the MSCI USA extended ESG focus index. So it's quite a mouthful, right? But the long story short is that MSCI essentially incorporates ESG consideration into their construction of this index. And this is done so by incorporating the business involvement and controversy screening and maximizing for higher ESG scores, right? The ESG ETFs then replicates such indexes. So likewise, the ESG ETFs incorporates ESG considerations as well. So the Global Impact Portfolio, it gives investors exposure to funds and ETFs that integrates such ESG consideration. So to summarize this selection of ETFs, right? Next slide, please. Yeah. The geography allocation and the ESG process and integration are taken into consideration. The portfolio is also optimized according to the relevant portfolio risk classifications, one that I think Roger has went through, from the conservative onto the aggressive portfolio. Then this gives the corresponding ESG ETFs of the Global Impact Portfolio. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I think having heard all this, right, what exactly makes these ESG ETFs different from the ETF that don't look at ESG? In essence, is that firstly, the ETFs, they provide you exposure to securities with favorable ESG ratings or stocks with high ESG ratings relative to their sector peers. Then through the ETFs, investors can also avoid exposure to companies with low ESG ratings and severe controversies. And furthermore, investors like yourself can obtain similar risk and return profile as the parent index, but with a more sustainable focus here. And when you invest in the global impact portfolio, you are now building a more sustainable portfolio by gaining exposure to funds and ETFs that are incorporating ESG characteristics. So in essence, is that ESG, is a new area that is also growing in awareness. And we see a long-term sustainability mega trend that is also influencing the way companies are viewing ESG. So ESG itself, they can present as a risk to some companies, but also as an opportunity for others. Now, maybe let me hand the time back over to Roger, right, to continue. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Chen Hao. I think that's very insightful in terms of how the whole process has worked. So maybe let's just quickly go into our own robo-invest in terms of besides the ETF, the ESG ETF as well. So next. Yeah, so this is an explanation in terms of how we build our robo-invest. So how we do it is that we'll define the suitable asset classes, whether it's equity, whether it's property, REITs market, or even into the bonds market as well. And then after that, we will actually select the appropriate investable universe, a curated list of ETFs or funds to deliver the targeted risk levels. We input our UOB AM proprietary capital market assumptions, CMAs in short, derived from our own in-house research processes into the algorithm. So probably I'll just pause it a little bit in terms of, I just wanted to go into a little bit of details, is that the UOB AM proprietary CMAs are actually derived by our own in-house research team. So what they will do is they will look at different asset classes. They will look at what is the expected return in terms of each asset class, and also what's the risk that's being exposed to. And then they'll put it into the algorithm, and that's where the algorithm will churn out what is the expected allocation into each asset class, whether it's 5%, 10%, or even 8% and all that, right? To optimize the best risk return reward for the particular risk profile of the client is into. So that is a little bit where we stand out in terms of our own proprietary CMA that's been derived by our own in-house experts as well. So in terms of differentiation, right, it's our proprietary CMAs that we spoke about. It's also in terms of the careful ETF and fund selection that both Chen and myself have actually elaborated on as well. So in short, right, not to worry, we do have all this information actually on our website again, which is actually on our microsite. So just take note that the key differentiating factor I would say is that the in-house research team actually comes up with the expected returns for each asset class. And then and in terms of how they come up with the expected returns, it's actually based on their more than 30 years of investment experience as a house itself, and this is how we derive it, and it's proprietary. After which they will then insert it into the algorithm. From there, the algorithm will then optimize what is the best allocation into each asset class to achieve the best risk return ratio for that particular risk profile as well. So all this are actually, and also in the graphical sense, is actually being illustrated on the microsite. We will actually share the link with you as well. Next. So I touched on a little bit in terms of the key features, and I just wanted to quickly share in terms of how you can get started in terms of setting up a regular savings plan. So on your left, right, this is how the Dash app looks like. Like I mentioned earlier at the start of the presentation, the Invest tile icon is actually on the second row, second from the left itself. So once you tap onto the icon itself, there's this setting up a recurring top-up option. Please select it as well. To turn it on, you just need to swipe to your right, you actually turn it on. After which, you can actually select the amount and the frequency as well. Frequency we actually do monthly or weekly, and the minimum is actually $50. After which, once you're ready, you can actually click on save, and it can be edited or deactivated or activated at any point in time. So once you click on the save button, right, this means that actually it has been activated. So the next time, the monies will be deducted from the Dash wallet. So having said that, it's also important to make sure that you have set up a recurring kind of a form of payment into the Dash wallet itself. Because once the Dash wallet, or rather once this RSP itself, right, is unable to deduct money from the Dash wallet itself, then the deduction will fail. The process will not go through. Yeah. Next. So besides the setting up of the regular savings plan itself, right, there are some other key features within the app itself. So one of the things is that how do you check my portfolio? How do I look at my fund holdings and all that? So for some of the members of the audience today, they are investing into our Robo-Invest today. Please look through, and then this is some of the key steps that you'll be keen to find out. For those who are new, this also shows you how easy it is to access certain information, for example, the portfolio and the fund holdings. So what you can do is that you can actually launch the Singtel Dash app, select invest, tap onto portfolio. There will be a holdings over there on the second screen. After which you can actually select equities or bonds. That's actually a carousel over there. There's a cash, bonds, and equity. if you tap onto any one of the asset class, right, that will be the breakdown of all the individual ETFs and the funds that we're buying into. On the right hand side, there's this thing called the details. What you can do is that you can click onto the details. It actually shows up the information that you're seeing right now, which is the current value, the total cost, the net asset value. And then if you wish to go even deeper, right, there's actually the fund fact sheet over there, which is the last one, last screen on your right. That is actually a detailed fact sheet in terms of what are the underlying securities for the particular ETF itself. Next. Another key feature is probably about how to change portfolio or retake the risk assessment. Now, having said that, on our end, right, we will try not to encourage our investors to actually retake the assessment, because by the assessment is best at the first instance when you have taken it. That's where you answer the questions, and then that will actually be a very good assessment in terms of your own risk profile. But if you do need to change, it's over here. So once you launch Dash app, select invest, tap on the portfolio. There's this button called change portfolio, which is the second box on the screen itself. After which, what you can do is you can actually adjust the bar according to your risk profile. And then after that, that will be, and then after that, there's a button at the bottom where you actually change the portfolio as well. Yeah, so on this page itself, that is the risk assessment that I talked about. So this is your risk assessment, which is very aggressive. What you can do is that click onto the view details and then retake risk assessment. Next. So how do I make a top up or even a withdrawal? So once you are, so for the members of the audience today, right, some of you may have downloaded the app, some of you may have gone through the account opening setup using MyInfo or even a manual onboarding process. After which you might be thinking in terms of where the market is, you are a bit unsure of how the market is going on, right? That's where I touch on a little bit of setting up the RSP. Probably that will be a better way to invest consistently and also without the emotions coming in terms of setting up and when and trying to time the market itself. So, but besides that, another key feature will be how to top up or withdraw. So for those clients that have started the account but yet to make a top up, right, what you can do is that, again, launch the Dash app, select invest. You will see the button over there, top up or withdraw. That's on your first screen on your left. After which there will be two payment methods over there, bank account and scan and pay. Bank account is actually through eNets itself. So in the third screen, that's actually a scan and pay, which is a pay now function. You key in the amount, the QR code will be generated. What you need to do is that you can save the picture, after which log on to your own IB account, and then go through the pay now feature and to upload this particular screen on through your IB app itself, and then the pay now feature will be activated, and then the account will be credited as well. Next. In terms of buying and selling, right? How do I track my own transaction history? So this is actually on the top on the app itself, whereby after you launch the Dash app and select invest, what you have been seeing right now is actually the dashboard. On the right is actually a transactions tab itself. What you need to do is like, tap onto the transaction tabs. You actually see Sing dollar and USD. That actually lists out the entire list of all the transactions that have been taken place, whether is it a deposit being made, whether is it a withdrawal being made, whether is it any fees being deducted as well. Next. So how do I view and also download monthly statement as well? So this is another way whereby you can actually check your statements, look at the what are the statements that you have, what are the transactions that you have done and all that. So what you can do is that at the app itself, at the dashboard that you're looking at, on the top right hand corner, there's this three dots over there. What you need to do is that you tap onto the three dots. The screen that we see will actually be the documents page. Tap onto the documents page, it will show you the monthly statement. Tap onto that. That's where the rest of the other statements are being shown as well. So you will need a PDF reader, FYI, to be able to read the statement that's coming onto your app itself. So besides the statements itself, the second tab is actually the tax invoices. So again, that you can actually review it, tap onto any of the tax invoices that you see. Again, you will need a PDF viewer to view the contents of the tax invoice too. Next. So I would just quickly, before we go into a Q&A session, I just wanted to have a quick poll, and given how the market's been very volatile in the first 4 months of the year, right? We just wanted to find out in terms of where we are right now, and yeah, let's see from the poll and then see how our audience is feeling today. Okay, the poll is slowly coming in. I think great. So from this poll itself, basically what we're trying to see is that how many of you actually believe in RSP, regular savings plan. And it seems like, most of you actually do think that RSP can actually help you to invest consistently, regardless of the market conditions. So that's great. And we would love to hear that as well. So let's just quickly go into the Q&A segment. And we have 2 questions being posted already. So maybe this I'll get Trina on as well. But having said that, so the first question that I think the audience has been asking is that the ESG portfolio actually seems to perform worse off than the non-ESG portfolio for first quarter 2022, as seen in the slides earlier on. So why should ESG investment be included as part of my portfolio? So maybe I'll just kick off this question first, and then I'll let Trina come in and also bring in a little bit of his insights as well. So given how the volatile markets have been for first quarter 2022, right? You will see that some of the commodities market have been doing very well. Energy prices have been going up. I think most of us could feel the pain when going to the petrol kiosk to top up our petrol for our cars and all that. So in times like that, the commodities sector actually would do quite well because the higher inflation, higher interest rate as well. So energy prices have been going up. So with that, right, from an ESG standpoint and from an ESG portfolio, right, ESG doesn't really invest into all these so-called non-ESG asset classes. And hence, because of that, the monies are flowing out from the ESG portfolios into into some of the into some of the commodity sectors, because that's where the growth is. So on the overall basis, in terms of performance, yes, we do notice that they actually slightly underperform, but we do feel that this is actually a short-term blip. We do not see this carry on forward, because on our view itself, and I think China also echoed that view earlier on a long-term view itself, we believe that ESG investments is still the way to go. We still think that the ESG theme is a mega trend that we've talked about, is going to stay for long, and it's going to stay for good as well. So maybe China, you want to add on anything from that as well?
Yes, thank you, Roger. I think you mentioned that markets are quite volatile right now. Right now, I agree. There's many asset classes that are underperforming, and I think the question on why should ESG investments still be included. I think you mentioned exactly my perspective, right? ESG is something about taking on a longer term perspective and also riding through short term volatility. You talk about the RSP earlier, right? RSP, it's for a long term savings plan, right? So that you can consistently and be invested for the longer term. Likewise, ESG is the same perspective as well. You want to be invested for the longer term, and we see this as a short-term blip, right? But the longer-term ESG trend, it still remains intact. In fact, there may be a greater push right here, especially for the case of energy transition. So you touch on the energy prices, and that's quite interesting. Because for myself, I'm seeing the utility bills going up, and I think some of us are also feeling that pain here as well, right? You are hearing people that are looking to install their own solar cells onto their rooftops, or even purchasing renewable energy instead to lower the bills. And I think this thought process, likewise, is the same for companies, right? Given this kind of energy price volatility that we're seeing, companies themselves, especially those that depend heavily on oil and gas imports, they're also looking to quicken their pace to transition into renewables. And the long-term threat of climate change that I've touched on earlier about how it has impacted India's wheat production, this is going to stay. And so the long-term trend on ESG as well as energy transition, it remains as well. And when we go on the ground to speak to Asian-based companies, right, likewise, you're hearing that they have reaffirmed that this energy transition is a long-term trend, and so there's this greater push right here. So essentially, it's that companies, I guess, they are supporting such energy transition. They are seen to be able to benefit from this for the longer term, and likewise, this could include beyond just companies that are supporting such trends, beyond just those that are investing in low carbon energy or renewables. You expand beyond just those areas. It could also flow into the value chain as well. So this is where we can see perhaps ESG opportunities to be in as well, right? So in essence is that, while we are seeing such a short-term blip, the ESG trend for the long term remains, sustainability mega trend for the long term remains intact as well.
Hey, thanks, Chen Hao. I think one of the good points that you brought up also could actually help to answer another question. So we have another question saying that, how does investing in ESG portfolio with UOB AM differ from the rest of other robos that we have seen as well? So I think one of the key points that you have brought up earlier is that you're talking to the companies, the whole sustainability office at UOB AM itself, going down to the ground, talking to the companies, understanding what kind of ESG initiatives that the company is embarking on. So I feel that this is actually quite a very differentiating view, because we do have the whole office looking at it on a day in day out basis, and probably you want to share a little bit more in terms of the capabilities of the sustainability office, and then what's so special about having our own sustainability office and a team. Yeah.
Yes, I think earlier I touched on a little bit about our sustainability journey, right? So in essence is that, we have this sustainability office. It looks at integrating ESG into the investment process, right? But what does it exactly mean to integrate, right? So I think for our sustainability office, what we look at is that we believe that ESG is really financially material to companies' performance, and they have a material impact on the investment we make, right? So we have came up with an internal sustainable investing framework as well as a process, and this focuses on fundamental research. It also looks at augmenting this process using technology. And also through our local expertise on the ground, we do ESG evaluation and assessments of the companies, especially those that are less well-known and less researched on, as well as, going up to engage companies, especially on example, climate change issues, for instance, right? And this is where we came into realizing that certain Asian-based companies, they are seeing this trend, seeing short-term challenges, but the energy transition trend for the long term still remains intact for them. And so in essence, this is how we apply an ESG lens within our sustainability team, and also within the portfolios that we look at as well.
Yeah, great sharing actually, Chen. So I guess that also goes in a little bit in terms of what you mentioned on the ESG ETF selection process as well. That I think you briefly touched on also, in terms of looking at the lens, applying all the different criteria into it, and then hence finally, the three ETFs were actually being selected as well. So maybe another question. I think this is quite interesting as well. What is your outlook for ESG for the rest of 2022? Yeah.
Yes, I think this is very interesting. I think one of the perspective I've mentioned earlier on is on energy transition, right? How we view that long-term energy transition trend remains intact, right? But as I've mentioned earlier on, right, sustainability is not just about energy transition. ESG is E, S, and G, right? It's not just energy transition. It's not just focusing on environmental. And within environmental, it's such a huge area, right? Not just about carbon emission, not just about energy transition, right? So, for other perspectives, we are also looking at is that, sustainability also looks at the S side as well, right? Maybe let me explain more about the S side and how this could have a longer term view over 2020 and further ahead as well, right? So there's also this growing focus on the social side, as I've mentioned, and COVID-19 was one of the examples I've used, right? So it put into perspective on labor management and supply chain issues. Now, I think some people do view S in ESG as sort of suffering from this thing, what I would like to call a middle child syndrome, right? Where a lot of people are focusing a lot on E because it's very prominent, and a lot of people are focusing on G because it's very important to the company, right? But S sometimes is neglected. However, there is this increase in the prominence of S, and maybe let me give an example of why we view the social pillar as well as the just transition as an important trend, long-term trend. So I think recently in 2020, right, there is this leading glove manufacturer. Its share price has actually increased by quite a fair bit, especially because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over COVID-19 pandemic, the glove manufacturer actually benefited quite a lot from it. However, there were actually a lot of outstanding ESG issues regarding the way the company manages labor, the way the company is handling COVID situation, especially for their migrant workers. And this subsequently led to the company being investigated. The factories were shut down. This affected business operations. Partners, the US, for instance, slammed some bans on the company's exports and imports. So this all affected the business operation and the financial bottom line of the company. So in the end, the share price actually suffered quite a tremendous shock. So this actually gives us a very good perspective of the ESG risk relating to the S side as well as the ESG in general, right? It's very important that we look at such trends, the ESG side, as well as looking at the just transition side, because energy transition is not just looking at how companies are transiting, but how they can transit in a fair manner. And one of the examples I gave on the S is a highlight. So this is one of the, aside from energy transition and the sustainability mega trend as a whole, just transition for the social issues are another area that we view as a long-term outlook or long-term trend for 2022 and further ahead.
Hey, great. I think that's actually provide quite a fresh perspective in terms of the S. Yeah, I didn't realize that actually you're right in a sense whereby most of us are actually kind of neglecting the social part. Everybody's focusing on the environmental part, and the governance part is quite critical as well. So I guess after sharing a little bit more in terms of how the whole ESG space and then the outlook and then where we are right now and all that, right? So maybe how can the retail investors that and the members of the audience today that we are here presenting, right? How can they actually participate in the ESG space, and then also can ESG objectives being achieved with some of the passive funds that we have seen, like the ETF funds and all that?
Yes, I think this is very interesting, and maybe perhaps let me also, while answering your question, touch on all the question that an audience has asked, right? Whether ESG also have a bond investment option as well, right? So I think, how can a retail investor participate in the ESG space? So today, the accessibility is being provided through technology, right? So we are talking over Zoom platform. Retail investors like yourself have a wide array of solutions that give investors exposure to ESG. And an example is the Robo-Invest, right? But there are also a lot of other platforms that this can be achieved by. But how can this then be achieved? The objectives of ESG be achieved through passive funds, right? I think maybe let me just talk about the difference between an active and passive fund. So an active fund is more of looking at investments that are being picked up by the portfolio manager, investment manager. They are performing research on the different securities. The aim is generally to outperform the market, right? So passive fund, in contrast, follows the composition of an index, hence why we explain so much on index construction process, right? And the aim of a passive fund, for example, an ETF, aims to mirror this performance of an index. So for both active and passive, they can achieve their own ESG characteristics. And so we are also seeing that passive funds, in order to achieve ESG objectives, they're also doing screenings, for example, those that I've mentioned, but they're also involving themselves more into what we term as active ownership, such as engagement and voting on ESG resolutions. So this include climate or social resolutions, right? And these are areas in which ESG objectives meet, and also a difference is made as well, right? But however, while there are some key differences between active and passive funds, I think it's important for us to remember that the fund structure, it may appeal differently to different investors, right? So these fund structures, they are not diametrically opposing each other, but it should serve to complement your investment needs, and I think as a retail investor, it's important for you to distinguish between the methodology and composition underneath the fund. And hence it's important to ensure that what the fund that you're looking at is actually really incorporating ESG, if you're looking into an ESG fund, for instance, right? And on whether or not ESG have bond investment options, ESG can also be integrated into the fixed income perspective as well, the bond investment as well. So there are also fixed income funds, and some of these are actually captured within the Robo-Invest portfolio. So some of these are under the actively managed portfolio. So some of our ESG funds, the fixed income funds, actually integrate our ESG processes, the processes that I've briefly mentioned, that within our sustainability office, we look at and set up the investment framework on.
Okay, great. I think that has been a very insightful sharing in terms of the whole outlook, the bond option, and also how can the retail participate. So yes, you're right. Like I mentioned earlier at the start. So UOB AM Robo-Invest is actually our first robo-advisor within the e-wallet itself, and with that we have 2 portfolios. And if you are keen to participate into the ESG initiatives, and then you are kind of believing in that this is one of the mega trend, and we do believe in the ESG is actually one of the mega trends going forth, then the global impact portfolio could be something for you to consider. And in terms of how the markets have been looking at for the past quarter or so, like I mentioned earlier, and like what Chen have echoed it as well, the option with the regular savings plan is available right now. And I think that would be a great option for you to get started because you are investing consistently in a diligent manner and in a disciplined manner over either a week or a month, starting from $50 as well. So that you kind of disregard how the market conditions are. You're not being swayed by emotions of trying to time the market. All of us here, I guess, no, I'm not able to time the market, and I think the HO strategy has always been, timing the market is more important than timing the market itself. So I think that let's just let's stick to that. Even the experts can't do it as well. So I think the RSP way is the right way to go. There's another question which actually talks about the current geographical spread. Probably for this, right, we would like to share with the members of the audience today is that that is actually being highlighted in the portfolios, and the geographical spread itself within the portfolio itself, right, that will be shown within once the performance page is up. You can actually see it in terms of the spread. If not, feel free to drop us an email. I think we have provided the link and the email address as well. Then you can take a look from there, and then we'll follow up from there as well. So maybe just another quick question that I think I was looking at that I myself have some questions on as well is that I have heard ESG funds have no real impact into the real economy because I really want to do my part in terms of going green, worrying about the environmental changes and how my my kids will suffer in time to come if we are not careful in terms of treating the earth well and then playing our part. So can ESG really make a difference to the real economy?
Yes, I think this is an interesting question, right? So perhaps, allow me to reiterate what ESG means, right? So ESG is looking holistically at E, S, and G, and not solely focusing on either one of the pillar. So ESG is another lens in which we can use to value at our investment decisions by identifying ESG-related risks and opportunities, and some of this, involves looking at the company's sustainability performance and the material. What I mentioned here, material ESG issues, those that are financially important and impactful to the company, right? So, in terms of whether or not ESG can make a difference, right? So what we are seeing is that, increasingly there's a lot of reputational risk element here. So one example of the company I've highlighted earlier, right, on the social issue, the reputational risk resulted in stock price underperforming. So companies, they are now, starting to realize that there is this huge reputational risk element there, and they are unwilling to be flagged out as poorly performing companies in terms of ESG. So this creates a lot of reputational risk for them, and also it limits their capital inflows. And this also likewise, on the flip side, incentivizes companies to adopt better policy and transition into becoming a better ESG performer. So when they do that, when a company strives to differentiate themselves and push for greater ESG movement, we can see tangible transformation that can have an impact, potential impact on the real world economy. However, I think touching on this is that there is also another element to ESG investing or sustainable investing, and that's the part on active ownership, right? So earlier on, I touched on the active and passive funds. Passive funds are starting to look more into active ownership, right? So what exactly does it mean, what exactly does active ownership mean, right? So active ownership, in essence, is that, right, we as asset managers, it's important for us to be driving shareholder value and creating long-term value for these companies. So what active ownership means is to be active in your investments, to actually actively look at the impact that the company is making, engaging them on it. And hence, we had these conversations with some of the Asia-based companies on their energy transition plans, right? Whether or not they are able to, meet some of the climate targets that they've set up for themselves, right? And likewise, when we look at active ownership, it talks about engagement and proxy voting. So if we think about research or, investment as sort of like a carrot for companies, right? Proxy voting is the other hand, is the stick actually. So when you proxy vote against a certain company on certain areas, right, they're actually letting the management know that these are the areas that we think you should improve on. These are the areas that we want you to improve on, and these are the areas that we are communicating our expectations to companies on, and making the companies work towards tangible change actually. So there is some form of a difference actually potentially being made through active ownership as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jenna. I guess I wanted to add on a little bit in terms of being the real impact. to the real economy. I think coming back to what does it mean to me as a retail client, right, as a retail investor, besides trying to make a difference, by investing into the ESG portfolio or looking at ESG investments, it's also trying to make sure that I'm trying to make my money work harder for me as well. Because while I'm trying to do good, I will look at the other part, which is investing for profit and purpose. So investing for profit, I'm looking from the angle of how the inflation has scaled up. I think we talk about the higher energy prices that we have seen, higher utility prices that you are facing. When I'm pumping my petrol, my petrol prices are going up as well. So it is a real problem. I think everybody is covering that as well. So and given how the markets are, and we have we spoke about that at length. I guess nobody is able to time the market. So by going through on the regular savings plan, investing in a consistent and disciplined manner, right, regardless how the market conditions are, that'll be a great way to start. Because like I mentioned earlier, the minimum amount to start from a regular savings plan is actually $50. You can do it on a weekly basis or even on a monthly basis. And besides that, I also just want to round up to as we come to the end of the session as well, to share with a little bit with everyone that at the start is that if you top up today a minimum of $500 into the Robo-Invest account, then actually and keep it there for 90 days, right, you actually do receive $20 worth of credits into your AM into your Robo-Invest account itself. And then after that, you can actually do receive 1,000 dash points if you're a Singtel mobile client as well. So with that, thank you, Chen Hao, for taking your time, and thank you, the members of the audience today for spending your evening with us. I hope you have gone away, having a good sense of what UOB AM Robo-Invest is, and more importantly, in terms of what the key differentiation that we have. That here at UOB AM Robo-Invest and what we are doing from the ESG portfolios that we have, from our own portfolio construction that we have, and also on the whole, what are we championing for as well. Yeah, so thank you and have a pleasant evening. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.